Well, good afternoon. This is Ian Crane. It's the afternoon, 22nd of November 2018, and it's dusk, and I'm outside Southwark Crown Court. Court has just risen for the fourth day here, where David Noakes is going through a Newton hearing, which is an opportunity for evidence to be heard that would have been heard had he pleaded gone through a jury trial, but on the basis that he pleaded guilty, opportunity for evidence to be presented that, as I say, the judge hasn't had the opportunity to hear. So this is really to enable the judge to come to a decision as to appropriate sentencing. Now, it's been an extremely grueling day for he's been in the witness stand all day. He's been under cross-examination basically from the time the court sat this morning, shortly after 10 o'clock, until it rose minutes ago. And basically his cross-examination is now over. So tomorrow morning, his own barrister will take the opportunity to cover some of the points that maybe need further carrying the cross-examination. No cross-examination is a pleasant experience, and Angela, any question, a competent Crown prosecution barrister, and in fact her defence barrister, I guess, speaks for itself. But my sense is that she still didn't have her foot fully on the gas, as it were, because I think there is an acknowledgement that David and the rest of the crew at Immuno were producing is something that has very, very significant beneficial effects. And once again, during the course of the day, on a couple of occasions, both the judge and Crown Prosecution Service were very quick to acknowledge that the end of the product is not here on trial. Morality of what David was trying to do is not on trial. This is a court of law. So what this really comes down to is, what was the true motivation of David Noakes and those who were working with him? So obviously, David makes the statement very clearly that his primary motivation was to help humanity, that his sole intention was altruistic. But as I'm sure you will read from the BBC and other news reports that manifest over the next few hours, they will make much of the cross-examination case that David was perhaps doing this for an element, but his primary motivation was self-gratification, and in their words, to live life high on the hog. David acknowledges during the course of evidence that perhaps spending a little over £750,000 on a six-seat jet at such an early stage in the business process may not have been the smartest decision. And it's pretty clear to see that those who just look at this on a very superficial level will certainly question whether or not that was appropriate and his motivation for doing so. But the bottom line is, you know, it's very clear that from the just headlines of the numbers that were presented to the court today, that over the entire operating period from 2011 through to early 2014, the total revenue generated was, give or take, around about 10 million. A little bit up from the 8 million that perhaps was presented by his own defence team yesterday, or the day before even, I've lost track, but around 10 million. But that is everything, that's the revenue. It doesn't take into account all of the operating expenses and the fact that they had some, I think, 18 people on the payroll. So tomorrow, one would hope, would be the final day, but it does look as though the case is going to roll into next week. So tomorrow, the day will start with David having the opportunity, obviously under the guidance of his own legal representative to revisit some of the evidence extracted from him under cross-examination. And then there is going to be, I think, some evidence given by two of the scientists who were very much involved in the manufacturing process of GC-MAF in Cambridge. And then there will be submissions presented by each of the legal representatives as to an appropriate judge has indicated that he will give some guidelines perhaps by tomorrow evening on what he's thinking about in terms of sentencing. But then there's other issues that he wants to take into account and consider, and that's why the course is going to run into Monday, where he will listen to further mitigation and then make his final sentencing decision on Tuesday. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be here on Monday or Tuesday. Obviously, I've made sure that I have a hotline to somebody in the court who will keep me updated on what's occurring. And although I'm not going to be able to do evening live streams next week, then obviously I will update at 8:30 each morning next week. So how this now pans out is anybody's guess. I think that what David was producing had very, very significant health benefits. And although the prosecution tried to undermine his claim that GC-MAF had no side effects, when they basically took him through patient feedback, then most they could come up with in terms of side effects was headaches, a short-term fever, glands in the neck swollen, a flush in the face, headaches causing one patient to go down to half a dose, slight nausea, some abdominal pains for a couple of hours after administration, some temporary inflammation, an enlarged spleen after 4 weeks of GC-MAF, fatigue, short term, just after the first administration, a pain in the neck and shoulders, causing them to go to a reduced dosage, weak for a day or two after the second injection, some discomfort in the lower legs, and perhaps one of the most serious, felt sick, achy, anesthesia, but no long-lasting effect. Now, that's the best that they could come up with, and obviously it certainly undermined, David's claim on his website at the time that there were no side effects, when clearly there were some. But you compare these side effects to, the side effects of some of the big pharma medicines, and certainly in the US, every pharmaceutical promotion material lists pretty much everything they could possibly come up with, and then the bottom line is up to and including death. And this is their get out of jail free card, and that is that they have told the person or taking the medication that in a scenario the medicine may actually lead to their demise. Well, the bottom line is, and this isn't challenged, is that nobody has suffered any serious negative health effect as a result of taking GC-MAF, and the vast majority of people who have taken GC-MAF for some pretty serious health issues have reported that they have benefited enormously from taking a course of GC-MAF. So, of course, ultimately one might argue or make the case that is the right person really on trial here? Because, GC-MAF has been known about since 1994. And perhaps even earlier, but certainly that's when it appears that the first academic papers were written on the efficacy of GC-MAF. So why isn't it in the public domain? Why hasn't there been any medicinal trials of GC-MAF? So, perhaps the real issue is why is it that the MHRA are not on trial here? Why is it that the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency are not having to answer to the courts for a crime against humanity for effectively preventing this and many other things to come to market. And of course, we've answered that in numerous live streams across the week. The primary reason is because of the Cancer Act of 1939 legislation that was introduced to protect the radium industry. And after nearly 80 years, it is still a situation where medical industry will not acknowledge that for treating cancer than chemo or radiotherapy. So one hopes that, regardless of that GC-MAF actually gets into the wider vocabulary, that more and more people start to do their research as to the efficacy of this product, and actually maybe through freedom of information requests ask the MHRA, ask the various Department of Health officials and the ministers why it is that there has not been any medicinal tests on GC-MAF, and if those tests fall into line with the experiences of David Noakes in a few years, why it cancer sufferers, why are they not given the choice as to whether they take this radiotherapy? And I think the reason is fairly apparent, because once it is freely available, and it's pretty evident that the chemo and radiotherapy industry will be no more. So unfortunately, Big Pharma is responsible for the deaths in the USA of some 250,000 people a year, and that's for properly prescribed medicines. I'd love to be able to tell you what the figure is in the UK, but unfortunately the MHRA don't actually track that information. I wonder why that is. Anyway, I will be back here tomorrow, and hopefully other people will come down once again. We had a full house today. There's a few people here watching the live stream, but David had a full house, and it's really, really important the court, the judge, and all of the legal representatives understand that this is a matter of enormous public interest, and that it isn't going to stop once the sentence is passed. Questions will undoubtedly be asked, and one hopes that David still has his liberty, although certainly for the last 3.5 years he hasn't had that, having to relinquish his passport, having had his bank accounts frozen, having had to report to the police station on his bail conditions every Monday for the last 3.5 years. One can only hope that the judge takes that trauma that these people have been put through by the delay in this actually coming to court. So anyway, if you can join us tomorrow, fantastic. If you can't, please join me on the live streams, and then please help by sharing. Only way in which we bring about the end of the phenomenal domination of Big Pharma in the cancer industry is to get people to do their own research and to ask the right questions, and hold those who are put in authority, unfortunately in most cases by Big Pharma, hold them to account. And that way we might actually be able to bring about at least one more change that we all know we need to see. So you have a great evening, and I'll catch with you tomorrow morning at 8:30 outside of Southwark Crown Court. Catch you then.